Okay, it looks like people are starting to join us here in our in the big webinar room. We are going to get started in just a handful of moments. But as you are getting settled in, feel free to, in the chat, just say hello. We are going to do a more formal check-in question in just a moment, where we ask for your name and where you work and whatnot. But for now, just feel free to just say hello. So we know we have an active group for today's webinar, and we'll get started in one more minute. Hi, Lydia. Welcome. Welcome back. Hello. Next. Hi, Bridget. Welcome as well. Thank you guys for showing up. We are really excited about today's topic, especially. And hopefully it's a good one. I had to bring a ringer along for the ride today. We're going to introduce both of ourselves in just a second. I'm excited to see you guys again. We are going to get started once it hits the 11:02 on the East Coast. And just giving everybody a second to join us. We're going to check in just a moment. We've got a good group already filing in. We know that the spring is starting to really hit its stride, so we wanted to make sure that we hit this particular topic that we're going to hit today. So with that said, we are officially at 11:02. We're going to get started. If you are joining us, welcome once again. We're going to introduce ourselves and give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves in just a moment. But this topic is a really good one for us to end this particular webinar series on. It has been spring into progress, spring forward with progress, and we can't go anywhere without our community. And so our real focus today will be to unify and build strong communities using community engagement strategies. And for that, we had to bring in a ringer, Africa, who's going to be with us today. So Africa, welcome. How about you get us started and let's get this show on the road.
Let's do it. So first and foremost, I'm super excited to be here with you all this morning, and hopefully what Nick and I have been able to come up with from our true lived experiences being consultants, hopefully something resonates. And at some point you get some kind of aha moment or a key takeaway that you're willing to try either in your school buildings or within your districts. Or if you're a parent, something you could take back and share with your district. So a little bit about Education Elements. We are a Scholarus learning company. We have worked with over 2,000 plus schools, and we have 13 years of experience. At minimum, 90% of our clients say that they enjoy working with us. They feel like the work they do with us is impactful. And of course, it is just our passion and our job to help come in and transform schools and districts. We're able to do that through different personalized approaches. We offer a lot of different service lines, from personalized learning to blended learning to strategic planning, responsive leadership, and the list goes on and on and on. And so, of course, we hope that today's session, like this 92+%, we hope that you all see value in what we have to offer you all today. So thank y'all for coming. And so I am Africa Fails. The quick blurb about me just speaks again to working with districts more with personalized learning, strategic planning, and responsive leadership. I do consider myself to be an advocate for equitable educational experiences for both students and teachers. And as it's stated, in my free time, I'm probably creating content as I am a social media influencer, or you can catch me in your nearest Target. More than likely spending money I shouldn't be spending because I go in there without a list. I'll let Nick introduce himself and kind of go over his blurb.
What's good is that Africa, you combine your passion for content and strolling through Target. You can combine those together, which I think is always very impressive. You can combine like your passions into some other work that you're doing. Similarly, I love to write children's books on the side, but what in my capacity with Education Elements, like Africa, we get to work from personalized learning all the way through strategic planning projects. And honestly, like we talked about in a few past webinars, some weird projects where they're completely off the cuff, and a district just comes to us and says, hey, like we've got this problem, we want to try to solve for it. What are your thoughts? Those are some of the most fun that we get to have at our job. But one thing, Africa, that I know you're passionate about through your work, and I am with with mine is that community is, you can't go anywhere without the community. So today we wanted to have that good conversation as well. So Africa, what are we doing today?
We're doing a lot of different things, but before we get into that, we do want to have a quick check-in. In the chat, please share your role or the district that you are representing. And then we do have a quick question for you all. Outside of work, what is a community that you love to be a member of? So again, in the chat, well, we already have your name, but your role in your district, because we want to know who you are, who you're representing, and where you're coming from. And then outside of work, what is a community that you love to be a member of? Nick, I'm gonna kind of put you on the spot a little bit. Do you have a community while they're getting their answers in? Is there a particular community that you love to be a member of?
All right, so Africa, you beat me to it because I was hoping to ask you first, so I had some more think time. No, so like it said on the previous slide, my exercise of choice is to play ice hockey. So I have a men's league ice hockey team that I get to go to. It's way too late at night, but it's a great group of guys. We've got like kids who are like just getting out of college, all the way up to people who are like grandfathers, and it is just a nice way to exercise, but also hang out with some like-minded people. How about you, Africa?
Oh, so mine is very similar. At my church, a group of us have come together and started a fitness group. And so not only do we hold each other accountable through our GroupMe page, but twice a week we meet up either at a park or in someone's neighborhood and we walk together. But outside of that, we've just been really focusing on if we want to look better and feel better, we're starting with the fitness aspect. And so that's been something I recently got into that I genuinely enjoy. And yeah, that's how I spend also a lot of my time if I'm not in Target or creating content. I'm
You can walk
probably
around Target, Africa. That's like
and I
the
actually
steps.
count those steps. I don't know if that's allowed. I do
Good,
count those steps. Absolutely. I
good,
do.
good, good.
I do. And I know we have some answers coming in. We have a program specialist. I do believe it's Jamie coming from Austin Community College. Good to see you, Jamie. Jen is coming from Pennsylvania District in School Leadership Services. And then we have Lydia coming from Marshall ISD, Marshall, Texas. Got it, got it, got it. She loves being a part of her church. Jen loves being a part of her neighborhood. Is that community of skiers?
Oh, that's skiers, all right. That's what that is.
Wow, that is cool. It's really cool.
We got
Aaron
Aaron in the
coming
house.
to us. Oh, CTE director. I used to teach in the CTE department, so that's fun. Any community of parents. Oh,
That's awesome.
I love that. You all keep those answers coming in. We'll make sure that we keep an eye on that. And we're
Yeah.
welcoming everyone. We just want to also, start to build our community with you all today. So thank you all so much for participating.
Mm-hmm.
Still rolling in.
Northwest ISD. Nice. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, continue in the chat. But Africa, now I can ask you, all right, what are we up to today? Well, and everyone else, please keep checking in. But Africa, what's up today?
We have a few different things. So aside from our opening and check-in, which we just did, we want to take some time to define what community is and what that looks like. Then we want to be able to establish a few guiding values, share a couple of keys that can help in regards to building community and unifying community. And then we'll have a quick recap. And of course, as always, we're going to have a call to action to round up our time together.
Awesome. Awesome. A few other people have checked into the chat. We've got New York represented and Cal City. It looks like that's Illinois, Hoover School. Or unless that's three. Carmelita, feel free to share exactly what the state is so I don't get that wrong based off of how you said it. But yeah, I work a lot in upstate New York, Bridget. So please let us know what district you're in. That would be nice to know a friendly face.
Dang.
Cool. Awesome. So we've got a few guiding questions for today. So Africa, what is like, if we don't walk away with anything else today, what are some answers that we want to walk away with?
So first and foremost, we really want to make sure that when you all leave today, we know why it is even important to, involve the community in engagement and how it can be valued for the district. And then we also hopefully have come up with some really effective keys that you all can take back and consider when you all do go out and get that community engagement. Hopefully that's something that you all are able to walk away with today. These are two questions that we just kind of want circling your mind. And of course, at any moment, if anything resonates with you, we want you all to let us know. So whether that looks like +1, yes, and, or some sort of emoji that, kind of represents, I agree, or I've been here, or this makes sense to me, or I've experienced this, please let us know. That also helps us be able to kind of structure our webinars to ensure that we're being responsive to what you all need as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you, Africa. And this has been a really great group of webinar attendees. I know that we have also like an audience on YouTube after the fact, so welcome if you're watching this later. But we do really appreciate the more that you put in the chat, the more that you share. Like Africa said, the more that we are able to craft the conversation to your needs. What I'm really excited for is Africa and I were able to put our heads together and really pull out some experiences that we have had working with school districts around the around the country on various different initiatives so that we can help build community. And the idea is that it looks different in every different place, and it looks different for whatever initiative you have. And we want to kind of explore some of those nuances today. But the more that we know about all of you, the easier our job would be. Like I said, this webinar series has been a lot of fun as you are thinking about how do you build initiatives on certain things, right? And it's, each element, every single week that we've done this, it tells a little bit more of the story. And we're really excited to share and end on this idea of community engagement. So the first thing we wanted to do, and I always tell people this, and I always make sure I don't do this, whether it's a best man toast or a keynote talk or whatever, you never start by saying Webster's Dictionary says, but today we're going to do exactly that. And that is look at two different definitions for community. So as we were starting to build out this webinar and really get our minds around what is our philosophy about building strong communities using community engagement, we figured let's take a look at what the definition says. So definition number one is very often how we look at our communities that we serve, right? It is a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. This is something we can't change. Very similar to the way our school districts are. We go to the schools in which we live. We work in school districts that are nearby us, and we have those families and whatnot. We can't change anything about that. And there's nothing wrong with that. As we talked about, we love our communities. There are pieces about our communities that we see in the chat that people truly love. But I bet it is not because of the geography, right? The
Right.
geography is what brings you all together, but it's not what hopefully keeps you there. So we want to, instead of thinking about our community that we are trying to engage as definition number one, instead focus on definition number two, a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. This is not something we are stuck with like geography, but this is something that we want to preserve. We want to advance. We want to cultivate. It is great when sometimes our common attitudes, our common interests, common goals, but it's also when we have different attitudes, different interests, different goals come together and, make our community that much more of a full experience. And although that sounds pretty, kumbaya, like the idea is that it is not always kumbaya, but we can work towards that. And that's what our focus is today. So our guiding principle is, what if as a district, we believe that community engagement is one of our central values? It is not something we do, it is a way that we do it. It's not something that we do, it is a way that we do it, right? Sometimes we've talked about this in the past webinars where it's like, and when I talk about personalized learning, Africa, I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's like, oh shoot, you should have observed my class another time when I was doing personalized learning. It's like, no, you've missed the point. Personalized learning is a way that we do it. You should be doing it all of the time. It should, right? Same thing with community engagement. If it becomes a central value of ours, then we are constantly engaging our community and we can build those authentic relationships with everybody that we serve. So an example of what this looks like, we wanted to jump back to Disney World, and or Disneyland, I guess, started it off. So in 1955, the Walt Disney Company, or Disneyland, they developed an orientation for all newly hired employees. And I only know about these four keys because my brother actually, towards the end of college, he did the famous college program, and he told me all about it, about how all the way from the president of Magic Kingdom all the way down to the ride operator like him. I believed he worked on the teacups, um, and they had to go through the same kind of orientation. And what I really liked about what he was telling me was that they all root their principles is rooted in their guidelines for how to be a good employee, to ensure a good customer experience. So from the very beginning of the Walt Disneyland Company, right, they believe that what we do is we create happiness. So it was a service, it was a vision of their service to the people that they serve. And so no matter what the role is that you have in the park, your responsibility, your ultimate North Star is to make people happy. So then the question is, how do we do that? So they take a look at, all right, what are the ways that we make people happy? Okay, now with those company values, we reinforce them as our priorities. And we're going to share them with you in just a second. But then most importantly, we take those priorities and we operationalize them into a decision-making tree for the community or for the employees to then advance that greater vision. So just so you know what they are, because you might want to steal this for your own company, right? One is safety. And these are hierarchical, right? So if you can't do anything else as an employee, you make sure that everyone around you is safe. Number two, be nice about it, right? So if you're trying to get people out of the like a burning building, you don't need to be nice. You do whatever you need to do to get them out of the burning building. But if you have the ability to, because the threat is gone, be nice about it. Put on a show is number three. Make it look good. And then finally is efficiency. Did we save the right money? Did we do the most with our time, etc.? So what they did is they took these four keys to service and they like provided some, I statements, right? For safety, I practice safe behaviors in everything I do. I take actions to always put safety first. I speak up to ensure the safety of others, etc. Right? I'll give you a moment here. Take a look at the other I statements that they have linked to each of these keys. The reason that these are so valuable is that we all know as like maybe first year teachers, first year leaders, we don't know exactly what we need to do in our role. But by operationalizing the values of the district, those values jump off of the walls and into the actions that people are being asked. So as a teacher, am I making everybody safe? Am I being nice about it? Am I putting on a good show? Am I doing it with the best use of my budget and my time, etc.? Right? That's the kind of thinking that we want to do to build that community. Because I think very often, Africa, and I know that you and I have talked about this before, but when we are working with districts, we can tell the districts that believe their values, they live their values, and the ones that just kind of talk about it. It's just on the wall of their gymnasium, right? And if we can make that conversion, that's that authenticity that we need in order to build that strong community. So what we're going to do today is reimagine how we look at community engagement. So our guiding question, like we said, was what would happen if community engagement was a central value of our district? Okay, so if the Disney example, right, to go back, is we create happiness. If our goal right now is to engage the community, okay, what are those keys? And that's what we're going to walk through today. And our outcomes, right, was if we build a strong community, we can have sustainable outcomes because we are doing our solutions as a team, as a unit throughout the district, whether you're a parent, whether you're a business leader in the district, you're a teacher, a student, a school leader, staff member, right? Everybody's on the same page. Therefore, we can have sustainable outcomes that really make sense for the most people. All right, number two, we have the ability to make equitable decisions that are better for everyone, not just for the loudest voices. And that's something we run into quite a bit. And then number three, we can deepen relationships and trust if we really commit ourselves to community engagement. It's not something that we do, it's a way that we do it, right? So here are 4 keys to community engagement. There are probably more, but when Africa and I kind of got together, we started talking about what were the things that we have seen make the most difference for the districts that we work with. We also talked to a lot of our other consultants and partners that work at Education Elements to get their thought process, their thoughts on this as well. And these are the 4 that really stood out to us that we would like to talk about with all of you. So think about which one of these resonate with you the most. So number 1, we have to create psychologically safe spaces. If we want people to really make to provide feedback, to provide insight, to care about the betterment of our school community, then they need to feel safe in giving their voice. And that is not always something that we can take for granted. And Africa is going to talk about that in just a second. Number two, we need to be able to show consistency with the way that we engage our community. And that is the one where I think it really lives the idea of it's not what we do, it's how we do it. If we're constantly engaging the community, it's not the, well, you should have come back later for when we did community engagement time, right? That's the idea there is if we consistently get an understanding of our community, the better we can make decisions for it. Number three, we have to make sure that all voices are at the table. And like different swatches of people we are going to talk through and talk about how that really does enhance the vision of your community. And then number four, very often, like we only will engage community members when there is a formal process going on. But what we are going to push everybody to today is that we want community members to be able to show up authentically in organic ways. Like if I spoke with a superintendent, for example, and he says like, hey, I work in a small district. I don't need some fancy, like huge, campaign to engage people's voices. I get all I need from the supermarket, right? That works in his district. It might not work in another district, but we have to understand how do we authentically and organically engage our community all of the time. So we're going to take just a pause there for 1 second. Which of these keys to unifying and building community resonates with you the most? And please put your answer in the chat. Is it creating psychologically safe spaces, showing consistency, ensuring representation or inclusion, and showing up authentically? Africa and I would like to know because we would like to be able to curate our conversation for you as we move through today, but we will explore each of these with a little like mini case study, if you will. All right, we got a couple for authentically Africa. We've got a few for psychologically safe spaces, representation, authentically. What do you think, Africa? Which one jumps out to you the most? I think I have an idea, but
I think for me, creating a psychologically safe space, if you can create that for people, then honestly, you will really be able to get all that it is that you need out of them, whether it's from the students, the teachers, the parents, the community members, whomever it is, district leaders, whoever it is. If they know that they can be safe in sharing with you what their ideas are or what their values are and what their beliefs are and what's important to them, and they know that you're taking that in, you're valuing it, you're letting them know, you know what, you're right, we hear you. Okay, let's see how we can examine this a little deeper. Let's see how this can show up in our district, etc. You can have a community that will really, whenever you're trying to move any kind of initiative, they'll back you 100% because there's a line of trust there. It's when we don't keep them in the know. It's when we're not transparent. It's when they bring their ideas and we tell them like, no, we don't do that here, or whatever the case is. That's when we begin to lose people in communities and districts. So if you can make them feel safe and that you are willing to hear what they have to say, you do care about what they have to say, and you're willing to maybe even, again, deepen how you can, or figure out ways that whatever their feeling, value, and belief can show up in the district, that's when you can really like knock down the barriers of not having trust with your community. And that's when you really are able to like welcome them in. What
awesome.
about you, Nick?
No, so Africa is going to nerd out about this in just a second here because
I am.
she's going to start it off there because what we realized was when we were putting together our keys, we knew that before we can do anything else, we've got to create that psychologically safe. Like that, right? So just like if you're the teacup operator at Disneyland, if nothing else, I've got to make sure everyone is safe, number one, like first. And so we're going to lead with that. But I think just to cue Africa up, because she's about to go into a few examples. One thing I can already tell Africa is that people are really interested in this concept that you just walked out. We've got some thumbs up. We've got 100%. We've got yes, Africa in the chat. We also have some people who are saying like, yo, we're new. So maybe speak to this a little bit. Like we are a new administration team. And like, because that's usually the first barrier. Like, I don't trust you yet, right? How do we build that trust? Or we've been around for a while and maybe we made a mistake in the past. And now we like the community is afraid of getting burned again. And therefore they are like kind of hesitant to engage again, And I think
I've seen both.
there's a bunch of
I've seen
different
both.
ways. So first of all, so I'm going to let Africa go, and then what we need to do is make sure Africa, you control yourself from going too long, because we do have other keys to do. Because Africa could definitely talk about this, I know, for like an entire hour. So maybe we just need to do that. Africa is maybe
I
the
could, I
answer.
could. I really
Cool,
could.
cool, cool, cool.
I will do
All
my
right.
absolute best though to make sure it's under an hour, considering the
Sounds
other
good. So
piece.
I know there's other things that you want to talk about as well. So we'll get into that. But I'll turn it over to you, and let's talk through some psychological safety now.
So of course, that is exactly what we're going to jump right on into. We have two different definitions here of what is psychological safety. One being the belief that one will not be punished, humiliated for speaking up about their ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. We see these types of things happen all the time in town halls and or board meetings. I'll get there in a second. And then the second definition is it refers to team members believing that they can take risks without being shamed by other team members. We see this too, where people just want to try that new thing. And then, maybe it's a colleague that's a veteran and they're looking at the new person like, she could have done that a different way. And it's immediate judgment. It's immediate, whatever I was doing isn't enough. And because you might be a veteran teacher or you're a veteran principal, you don't see that what I'm doing has value because you've never done it before. But just because it's new doesn't mean it won't work. And so we're going to go into all of those things really quickly, because I can't fix it. I can't talk about this for an hour, even though, yes,
You can do whatever you want, Africa. I just knew that we need accountability partners here, and you're going to
and
get
I
it.
appreciate you.
Yeah.
We're going to jump right in. I do have experience working with a particular district in Georgia. They gained a ton of new district leaders, and those district leaders were like, look, with all the things that we've been through, we need to revamp what learning looks like in the classroom. Some of the district leaders are from Georgia. Some of them weren't even from the state of Georgia. So they really don't have a lot of knowledge on the area. Just for further context, these leaders and other department leaders go into these schools. They do what they call learning walks about 3 different times of the year, typically at the start of the year, mid-year, end of the year. And they go in and they see, what are the teachers doing? Are they really revamping the learning? If we chose to have education elements come in and do personalized learning or blended learning, are they really applying these practices that education elements is bringing? And even if they don't know exactly what we're talking to them about, they're going in with the expectation to see something different, something that they've never seen before. And lastly, just to add further context, each of these schools also has a district level point person that's a part of a different department that they go to for any other supports. So the example here is there have been instances within this district where we have shown up for the learning walks and they did not let us come into their school. What we learned later on was that this was because other learning walks they had come through, they didn't go so well. There was a moment where if your learning walk was low and then your other observations that your admin team did was low, that could possibly cost you your job. And so they didn't want people really coming in and seeing what was going on. Some of that could have been them not being prepared. Other times it was maybe they just simply weren't comfortable because they've had bad experiences with some of the people who have come into their buildings for whatever reason. Maybe the trust was voided. Maybe someone said something to them that made them feel small and it wasn't a safe space. Any of those things. We could tell that there was a very clear breach of trust within this district. There was also extremely low participation whenever the district wanted to do anything regarding the community, whether it was a community event, whether it was getting community feedback. The community was like, "No, we don't really want to get involved." Again, you could tell there was a complete breach of trust, and some people even stated in some of the feedback that we saw from their community engagement that they didn't feel comfortable voicing what they had going on because it's been held against them or thrown back at them, or they know someone else who spoke up and lost their position. They know someone else who spoke up and were treated differently. So in situations like this, what exactly do we do? What exactly can we do? And where does community engagement lie within all of this? And I'm so glad you all asked. So we have a couple of recommendations here. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we're encouraging teachers and students to be reflective and self-aware. A lot of the times we just want to go in and name what they're doing right or wrong. And there are some times where we need to ask them, what do you think are your areas of strength? What do you think are your areas of weakness? Now, we're talking about the immediate classroom, but teachers and students are a part of this community engagement as well. And considering a lot of what we do, the teachers have to go in and implement it. The students have to attain it. We have to make sure that we keep them at the center. And so one thing we can do is help them figure out areas where they need or want the feedback. Sometimes we go in and we give them feedback about something that they weren't even looking for. They wanted you to give them feedback about something else. And here you are giving them feedback about a completely different topic. And so they don't see it as valuable. Another thing is, and it's part of number 3 recommendation, but sometimes when we do that, it can seem like a gotcha to the teachers. It can seem like you're trying to put them on the front street, or you don't trust them, or you were trying to find that one thing that they did incorrectly based on what you know. Now, you may not know what their classroom is made of. You don't know the demographic. You don't know the relationships. You don't know the dynamic. But now I'm coming in and I'm telling you all the things that you're doing wrong versus asking you, is there something in particular you want me to look for? Is there something in particular you want me to help with? Is there something in particular you want my feedback from? Next, you want to nurture a growth mindset. That's important. And a growth mindset really just takes time to let people know, hey, look, you can take risks, you can make mistakes, you can collaborate with others, you can do all these different things that foster creativity, and we're not going to knock you for it. We want to see what you can do and how you can do it. And if it works and it's effective, then keep doing it. And maybe that's the one thing that will spread throughout the school, or the one thing we can spread throughout the district. Of course, this helps teachers feel more empowered and engaged also. If the teachers feel empowered and engaged, you have to believe that it'll also trickle down to the students. The students will go home, they'll go to their parents. Oh, I love Miss Brown's class. We had so much fun today. We did this, we did that. So that when it's time to get that community engagement, teachers are all in, the students don't mind giving feedback, the parents can think about that one time their kid came home, or maybe the 12 times their kid came home and they were so excited about what they learned in the classroom, and they definitely want to give feedback about that. There are instances where sometimes parents also just kind of want to be like, what went wrong today? But the kids are like, no, it was great. So to be able to have that great feedback, and even some constructive criticism is great, but we have to nurture that growth mindset to let everyone know that if we're growing, there are going to be high moments, there are going to be some not so high moments. But either way, whether the progress is slow or fast, it's still a process and it's still progress. And then lastly, embrace the exchange of feedback. I have seen it time and time again. They open the floor in a board meeting. People get up there and share their thoughts, their values. They speak from their lived experiences within the district, whether it's a teacher, a principal, a district leader, whether it's a community leader, maybe it's an alum parent of a student that graduated from that district. They get up there, they share their thoughts, their feelings, and the feedback isn't necessarily welcome. The space is given, but the feedback isn't welcomed. And so what we want to really do there is, again, embrace the fact that everyone's going to come in with different types of feedback, and that's okay, but have a forward-thinking approach of, if this is what they're telling us, we have to maybe do some deeper digging. Maybe the community engagement looks like, oh, we need to push out a survey immediately and see if this person is not the only person feeling this way. Or it could look like, we know this person isn't the only person feeling this way. We need to get some more voices in the room, and we want to hear more about this. Whatever it is that you need to do, but there has to be an even exchange of wanting the feedback, welcoming the feedback, and then being responsive to that feedback. And again, some of this also goes into when you go into those teachers' classrooms and you do these visits, remind them this is not a gotcha moment, but you also have to mean it. So whatever it is that you see, you can't go back and say, well, we didn't see this that day. Again, you're in classrooms for 10 to 15 minutes. You're not going to see all the things, but give them credit for what you do see. And if there is a growth moment in that, you can go ahead and highlight that too. But also, again, as long as we're continuously encouraging teachers and students to be reflective and self-aware, nurturing that growth mindset and embracing the exchange of feedback, meaning we're willing to accept what it is that you have to say, even if it is not your lived experience, it's someone's. And so we don't want to invalidate that. Again, that'll help nurture and create that safe space. Mm-hmm. A few guiding questions from that is just, when you are thinking about how to get community engagement and keep it a psychologically safe space, has the space been created where students and teachers and even community members can bring up their problems or their tough issues fearlessly? Meaning, can I walk in here and say exactly what it is that I'm feeling as a parent? Can I walk in here and say exactly what it is that I'm feeling as a principal? Can I walk in here and say exactly what I'm feeling as a teacher and it not be thrown back at me? Can I do that? As a student, can I say, this is what took place in the school, this is how I feel in my school, and no one in my school is going to treat me differently after I share this? That's extremely important. Next, do teachers and students feel as though their unique skills and talents are valued and properly utilized? So we have a lot of teachers that bring a lot of different things to the plate. We have a lot of students that bring a lot of different things to the plate. How are we making sure that everyone's unique skills are being used the way that they should be being used, and that their talents are being appreciated? Because I think that's another thing as far as psychological safety. When people don't feel appreciated, they start to withdraw. If people don't feel like you value what it is they bring to the table, they immediately they withdraw. They don't see a point in being at the table. They'll go find another table to sit at all together, or they'll bring their own. Mm-hmm. And then they've joined their own siloed community. And we don't want that to happen either. And then lastly, when learning new strategies and practices, is it really safe for teachers to take these risks and make mistakes in their classrooms without it being like a huge evaluative judgment? We don't want to do that. We can't constantly urge teachers to get creative and try new things and think differently. And then when they do, we're like, but not like that. No, not that way though. That's not creativity. That's not giving them the space to take risks. And that's definitely not giving them the space to make mistakes and learn from them. That's the biggest thing, is making the mistakes, taking those risks, learning from them. And sometimes they'll try new things and it will be an immediate hit. So we just have to be able to like really trust them and allow them to trust us back and know that what they're doing within these classrooms is going to be meaningful and powerful for the students.
Africa, first of all, awesome. I'm going to stall with a question in a second,
Okay.
in a second, so that other people can ask a few questions in the chat, because I can tell, I'm guessing that there are people that have some either comments or questions. So feel free to put those in the chat right now. I'm going to stall for you, everybody, while you do that. But so one thing you might not know about Africa, she may have mentioned it earlier, but I don't know if you did, strong experience as a STEM educator, like growing up as a teacher. And I can just tell like your approach is much more like, this is our design thinking. This is our problem, like inquiry based, like in the sense that like the way that we engage teachers in this way is more about getting to the best ending, right? Instead of it being like this evaluative thing. It is, I've got a hypothesis, we're working with you, right? And I think that is a process that needs to be practiced, I'm guessing, right? And so A, is that how you feel? And because B, I felt like you were talking to me as like a first or second year teacher, where I was nervous about my principal coming into my classroom every single day. And I did not have that mindset. So I guess, yeah, how did you eventually come to that? And I don't want to blame it on your STEM education background, but I feel like that is like what contributes to this mindset of yours in a good way.
And it's funny that you brought that up, because when I first went into teaching, I was teaching just career and technical education, which was just technology engineering. And then they came in and said, hey, you're going to also begin to implement STEM 101, which at the time was a learning program. And I'm like, okay. So I'm looking through what the curriculum looks like. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to try some new things. I recall vividly having an observation from an administrator who did not know what I was teaching at all. He came in, observed my class, and ranked me like extremely low. No context to what I'm teaching. Barely knew who I was. He was a brand new principal. And I was like so sad, because I'm like, he didn't even give me a chance. So before I got too emotional, I started pulling my artifacts that backed that, I was, distinguished in this or advanced in that. And so once we had a nice little sit down and I got to show my artifacts, he came back in after learning more about my class and he got to reobserve. But that's one of those things where people just come in assuming they know what's going on and don't really have a ton of context to what's even taking place in your room. And after I learned that, I was kind of like, okay, that's also going to teach me a lesson at how I go into other people's classrooms, because we did peer-to-peer observations as well. And so I was like, okay, so I need to know that I know what I know and I don't know what I don't know. Right. And it opened an avenue too for ask questions. Because of course, after he gave me that horrible observation, I didn't want anything to do with him. I was like, oh no, I'm not going to him for anything ever. Like, I don't feel safe with him. So I'm just not doing it. But I think it is important to take the design thinking approach and to, again, just that ask questions piece is going to be major. If there's anything that is unclear, if there's anything that's kind of foggy, please just ask the questions. It's okay. It's perfectly okay. We do that with any learning walks that we do with personalized learning. We have look for questions. And if we go in and we don't see the look for, there's certain questions we can ask the teachers and the students. Hey, I didn't see this, but do you all do reflections at all? Do you all have reflection journals? Oh yeah, they're right over there. Okay, good. They do reflection and goal setting. Like that's how we're able to know that even if we don't see it in that 8 to 10 minutes that we're in a classroom, that it does take place. Awesome. Bridget said, dealing with a board member who is immediately and regularly critical. Yes. How do you best provide feedback about what would work as a better approach by that Board of Education member for school administrators and community members? I think that when you know how someone is, you automatically just kind of say, okay, we know that's who they are. I've seen this in another district where it's kind of like they knew if this one particular person was coming, they knew that this person was going to have something critical. Everybody kind of knew. if we popped up virtually and I saw the person in the room, I was like, oh, they are about to have a time at this meeting. We knew what was about to happen. I think in those moments, you still let them feel the same way. Still let them feel like, and let them know that what they have to say is valued and it's appreciated. And thank you so much for your feedback. I will say that there have been times too where I've seen district leaders, they reword their questions so that that same person who comes in and may have those critical thoughts, they're not able to open up that can of worms, unfortunately.
Right.
And if I can be completely candid, that's kind of the structure we took to this session today. So instead of speaking to divided communities, let's just talk about unifying and building communities as a whole. Let's not even open the window for anything like that could be remotely negative or come off as a connotation of like negativity. And sometimes that's what you have to do too. You have to be able to just say, how can we reword this? How can we get ahead? If we're anticipating this person is going to come in here and be this way, how can we get ahead of that? What can we not say that could be a trigger word? What can we ask that will only allow for, like, yes, still true responses, but hopefully it won't allow them to like go off on that critical deep end that they typically like to go off of, if that makes any sense at all. I always just go back and kind of reframe and restructure questions so that if I know that person's coming, I'm anticipating it, I'm going to get ahead of it by all means, if I possibly can. And I hope that was helpful. I'm not 100% sure.
I think it was. And Jamie, I just read you are on the right track in terms of your notes from Africa. She can reach out to you in the chat just
Yes.
to chat on the side. I think sometimes what you're getting at, Africa, is that sometimes people don't recognize their power in a situation.
Yeah.
Right? Like they don't know like that they're coming at it with a lot more weight than they think. They think, oh, I'm just Bob, or I'm just whatever, and not like I'm the superintendent or I'm a board member or whatever. I think there are power dynamics that sometimes people are blind to. There are ways to get about that. There was one situation where I was in a very similar situation that you were in, Bridget, where we were like, this person is taking a lot of the positive energy out of the room. And it's like, okay, well, we know that. So then how can we almost like limit their airtime? And one thing we actually just did was say, okay, every board member right now, we would love for you to just go around the room, everyone share, everyone's got a minute, right? It sounds really simple and almost like, you're going back to kindergarten, but that really does give everyone equal airtime so that even though, and we're going to skip ahead in a second to talking about loud voices, what we don't want is that one board member, their negativity or their critique to be the only voice. Like it seems like, okay, well, it's 50-50. This is a really bad idea, actually, when in reality, only 1 out of the 10 or 1 out of the 7 felt that way. So there are different strategies that you can massage it, but I think that's actually a really good segue to where we're headed now, which is the idea of consistency. How can we make sure that those types of formal environments, those formal observations that Africa was just talking about, how do we make sure that we're actually just doing it all of the time? Because Africa's solution, if you were really paying attention, was that consistency piece. I can create psychological safety by showing up in those teachers' classrooms more often than just when I'm going to evaluate them for their formal observation, which is going to affect their pay and their record or whatever, right? So it is, do I go into the rooms? Africa had mentioned our work with personalized learning, and we do learning walks quite a bit. And I can tell right away, Africa, that they're like the administrators that are in the rooms and the ones that are not, because you can tell the kids are they start squirming. The teachers are like, you're like, like, cut it out, kid, and like we all know that we've all been there. But that shows that the point of the observation is not to get better. It is to be compliant. It is to be evaluative. And people that then suddenly the people's like cortisol levels like spike, and it is all about surviving and not improving. And our job as leaders is not to raise, sometimes I think we need to raise the survival instinct of the person so that they are going to want to then meet the moment and grow. But in reality, what if we just like lowered that barrier, increase psychological safety so that growth is a lot easier? And that's what you're getting at. And the way that we can do that is through our second belief. And I knew that we were going to talk about psychological safety for so long after, because it is such an important one. The idea is that this is a belief that true thought partnership between us and our community is a result of ongoing commitment to provide feedback and insight through various forms of engagement. And the reason that this is important is because it enables the district to triangulate its data and enter a continuous cycle of learning. So one thing that so the district that we're going to use here is there's a district that I'm currently working with. They are an awesome project team and very thoughtful about the work that they're doing. They're taking a look at their middle school program right now, and they wanted to make sure that they engage the community in terms of what can we do to make the middle school experience as impactful as possible so that we don't forget that group of kids between elementary school and high school. But one thing that they, as you can see on the right-hand side, one thing that they were especially conscious is that they have community members that will beat the drum really loudly. They'll be the ones who want to get their voice heard and in there. And that is a good thing. If you have people that are very passionate about what happens in your district, it really is an asset. The issue is if that is the only voice that we're hearing. So it's the responsibility of the project team or the leadership group to make sure that we are engaging all voices. And while Africa is going to talk about representation in just a second, that when I say engage all voices, what we mean is that not just one person. And from there, we do have some examples of like, what did we do here? So the first thing is if you're going to be doing a survey or if you're going to be doing learning walks or what have you, do multiple iterations of it. Because like Africa said, one observation in a classroom doesn't tell you the story of what is going on in that room, right? I know that for one class period as a teacher, I could be the best teacher that you've ever seen. So it's real, an observation really is more about a teacher's capacity more than it is the reality. And the only way that I know about what reality is if I consistently take a look at what's happening in their classroom, or if we're doing a review of the middle school program that we're consistently looking, whether it be through surveys or whatnot. Number two, make sure you triangulate the data. If you're doing a focus group, great. If you're doing like one-on-one interviews with various people of different jobs within the school district, great. If you're doing surveys, awesome. If you're doing a like town hall forum, great. The issue is if you just do one of those things, because then the risk you run is sorry, I skipped ahead, but I was going back to the chat. What Bridget said about the loud board member, that is a possibility, right? But by consistently engaging, you can hear more voices, and therefore the data gets more and more accurate as you go along. And then number three, and this was the biggest game changer for that work in that district, is we developed a design framework. Because very often, so essentially what we did is we did a lot of research on middle schooler development, and we created a framework. And then using this framework, we brought in, all right, this is the survey we're going to use. These are the questions we're going to ask in the focus group. These are the look-fors we're going to do on learning walks. And we made sure that all of them tied back to one common language. And therefore, all of those different data sources spoke together to tell one coherent story. Because sometimes what we see is like, okay, well, the survey was asking this, the focus group was asking that, they don't match. What are the trends? We don't know. So the more consistent we are, and the more that we can talk a common language through that consistency, the better the story is that we can use to inform our decisions moving forward. So a few questions that you can ask yourself, and these questions, by the way, that we have are for you to gut check yourself as you're moving through a project. And I know we have 12 minutes now, Africa, so I'm going to hustle up here, but reflect on your district's mission, vision, and values, and what is it you're trying to accomplish. Create a design framework. It takes a little bit of time, and if you need any help, please reach out to me. It was a little bit of a process, but it was so valuable on the back end. Number two, consider that you have multiple data sources. And number three, when was the last time you engaged your community on that particular component of your vision, mission, or values? And be careful, it's a trick question, is that it should be all of the time. It should be something that you were living, not something that you do once. So that's why if you say like, well, I did it in October of last year, well, yeah, hopefully it happens more often than that. Awesome. Okay, so with that said, Africa, we've got 11 minutes. I promise I will go fast. But now we want to talk about ensure representation and inclusion for our third key of today.
Yeah. So representation, of course, is just the belief and action of speaking or acting on behalf of someone or the state of being represented. And inclusion is the practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities, resources to people who might be otherwise excluded or marginalized, such as those who have physical or intellectual disabilities and members of other minority groups. So not to dig too deeply, because I know we have like a little bit of time, but they're the district in Indiana. They revamped their strat plan, and they have a very narrowed focus on ensuring that students feel represented and included in their school buildings. And so they did 2 community surveys, they had 2 town hall meetings, and they had 17 different focus groups. Now, the issue here was still, even after giving out all of those different focus groups, which are just, we come up with 8 questions, ask the questions in a focus group, people give their lived responses. After they did all of that, we got back a whopping amount of feedback of people advocating for others who they felt like their voices weren't heard or considered in this feedback because of the way that we went about doing the focus groups. We had one way through Zoom. That was it. Everyone doesn't have internet access outside of school. So it wasn't fair to the students who couldn't hop in. It wasn't fair to the parents who might have been at work. It wasn't fair to the district leaders who might have been at work and didn't have time. And so then another thing that was brought up too was a lot of participants in the focus groups noticed there was a lack of diversity. They have a very diverse school district, but they did not feel like the focus groups represented that very well. And then lastly, there was a concern because a lot of the feedback also talked about students speaking up and saying, I don't see a lot of representation of people who look like me, or I don't see a lot of resources that are made for my learning disability. This is not fair to me. I don't enjoy school. I don't want to go. That's really what it came down to. So how can we get around to this as far as community engagement is concerned? Extend the community engagement opportunity. It's impossible. No, it's not. Extend it. Everything is figure outable. If the only way that we did focus groups was virtually, we had to go and do in person. We went during a school day and we did more in-person focus groups. We had a session for parents. They could come up between, like, I think pretty much lunchtime. We had another session for administrators and principals that was just for them. And then we also did another session with students. We were very responsive to that. We heard what they said. There are voices you all have missed, and this feedback is going to be extremely skewed. So we extended the community engagement period. Then you have to reflect on the demographics of the student bodies that the schools serve. Students do want to see posters with people who look like them. Students do want to know that their learning disability was thought of when this lesson was made. So there may be some modifications and or accommodations just for that student, and they're really okay with it. They want the help. Also, in a lot of cases, it's legal that you have to give them that help. So we have to make sure that that's there. Those supports are there. Those resources are there. But you really have to take time to dig into who it is that you're teaching, who it is that your student body represents, and how you can ensure that everyone is included and everyone is represented fairly. And lastly, consider the impact of decision-making and policies on historically marginalized groups. You have to create environments where faculty, students, parents, teachers, students, everyone feels valued, safe, and seen. That is extremely key, especially for those people who don't have the loud voices, especially for the ones who do have the loud voices, but nothing that they say is ever actually listened to. It's heard, we hear you, but we're not listening. Like, we're not really taking it in. That does happen. That's a lot of people's real lived experience. And then that's also why when you have town halls or board meetings, they're not there because they don't feel like what they have to offer is value. So I'm gonna just stay at the house anyway, because they don't care. Because if they did, I would know, I would feel it. A couple of guiding questions. Do you all have systems and structures in place that ensure equitable distribution of community resources? Again, everyone doesn't have the internet. So what is another way that we can make sure that if we're doing a community survey, everybody who wants to give feedback can actually get involved? What can we do? Even with school resources, every student doesn't go home. They don't all have laptops or Chromebooks. And some of them do. They get them from the school and then they go home and they still can't use them because they don't have Wi-Fi. Do we have some library hubs that are allowing our students to come in and still get the work done? Have we looked at every option possible to ensure that in certain areas of the city, there's something for everyone to ensure that they get this resource? Next, what strategies or best practices can we use to leverage the learning opportunities that we are providing that are suitable for the students within our district? We don't ever go into a district and tell people what you're doing is wrong. We're literally coming in to help you leverage what you're already doing. So if you don't have modified lessons, if you haven't accommodated that student who maybe is not a visual learner, maybe they're an auditory learner, we're thinking about all of those different things. Have you really assessed what your students truly need for real, beyond what it is that you think they need? And of course, lastly, how can we ensure that all teachers and students always feel welcomed in their learning environments? That is so key to feeling included and to feeling represented? Is it only SGA that does the announcements every morning? What about the students who couldn't make SGA? What about the student that ran but didn't make it? Their voice still deserves to be heard. Or do we have the clubs and the classes and the offerings that let students know, we heard what you said, you like the arts, great, now we're implementing dance. Oh, you wanted modern dance. Okay, well, we're going to figure out a way to amplify that or leverage that. There's all these different ways that we really can come together to ensure that the students and staff all feel welcomed and safe and comfortable and all experience equitable educational experiences.
Mhm. Awesome. And Africa, that's actually a perfect segue to our final one, which is we want to show up authentically, right? We want to make sure that we are a community of the community. And if we do not, strike the right balance of that representation, then we're not necessarily doing our job. In this case, what we want to do is make sure that we are talking that we develop deep relationships and trust by creating spaces for community members to engage with one another. The idea is we want to create moments of innovation and collaboration within our district, and our community has a lot to offer. We want to make sure that we create authentic moments. I think back to your original example from the first key, Africa, about talking about those teachers who feel psychologically unsafe when people come into their rooms. Do you as a leader go into their rooms and say, hey, saw an article, I thought you would really love this, or there's this PD I think I really want you to go to because I know that you're interested in this. That's an authentic touch point that isn't evaluative, that isn't scary, that then deepens that trust and that relationship with that teacher. An example of this, just to bring back the Disney example, when Walt Disney was creating his studio with this value and vision in mind, what you see on the right-hand side of the screen there, that is his map for what the actual studio lot is supposed to look like. And all those crazy arrows is the pathways that they would have to walk to get around. And why does he create that? Is because he wanted people from different departments to organically bump into each other, say, hey, do you want to get lunch? I would love to know what you're doing over in merchandising as an animator, right? And having those authentic connections is really important. So I guess the question is, how can we create those moments? And we're going to skip the example for now, but how do we create those moments for people within our community? So lean on your community to build an ambidextrous organization. I can't stress this one enough. If you can get your group, your school district, find a group of people, diverse group of people, for everything Africa just said. You got it, Jen. A diverse group of people in both in all sorts of ways, right? Get them to start thinking, one group to start thinking about, all right, how can we improve things right now? Have another group start thinking about how can we focus on things long term? Let the innovation kind of just flow without just asking them, what do you not like about our school? Put them in a position to do something about it. You see there the idea of create space where they can interact with one another, utilize channels of communication that your community uses. If they use Instagram, use Instagram. If they don't, use Facebook because that demographic uses Facebook. Figure out a way that they actually engage so that they feel like they are being as informed as humanly possible throughout. We did it, Africa, with 2 minutes to spare. Those were our 4 keys. Obviously, Africa and I would love to come to everyone's district and do this for 8 hours. So if that's something that's interesting to you, please reach out to us. Africa and I would love to hear from you. And we're going to put our email addresses on the screen in just one second. But Africa, what do we see on the screen here? I'll turn it over to you to close.
These are all of the many different services that we offer here at Education Elements. Again, when it comes to instruction, we have personalized learning and blended learning. We have school transformation and improvement, instructional framework, strategy, strat planning, ESSER funding planning for anybody who still has some of those funds left over. Reach out to us. We can help you figure that out. Curriculum strategy, leadership, organizational leadership with teams, as well as district operations, and then surveys. We do that. We have a whole department that handles surveys for strategic planning, engagement surveys, and teacher effectiveness surveys. So if you need any of these things, or if you feel like your district needs any of these things, definitely reach out to Education Elements to help you get where it is that you need to go.
Because Africa, what I see for all of these is you can't do any of these things
without the keys,
without the keys and without that community that we were just talking about today. Jamie, yes, of course, we will send out an email with all of the resources that went into the making of today's session. But we would love to join you again in the future. Africa and I are actually teaming up one more time. So get your phone out, take a QR code and that link that was just dropped in the chat. We are coming together one more time to focus on teacher appreciation next week. It's going to be a fun one. We're just going to be really excited to celebrate our teachers. We've done a lot of good work throughout these webinars in terms of working towards progress in our districts. Africa, so thankful. I would have just listened to you forever if I could have just not been the one. And I'm sure other people felt the same way. But if you want to reach out to Africa or myself, those are our email addresses.